I went from software engineering to public speaking, and that can be extremely weird because those two are completely unrelated and you learned it in a completely different way. But there is a big reason I did that. I was a software engineer for almost 10 years and I learned about coding from a very young age. Problem is, by doing that, I completely missed the mark when it comes to social skills.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today, we have a really special guest, Geoffrey Huck, who is an awesome speaker. He went from being a software engineer to being an inspirational public speaking coach. And we see a lot of coaches out there, but what I found very, very intriguing about your story, Geoffrey, was how personal it was to you. So thank you for being here. Let's get started, man. Tell us how you got into this crazy world.
Yeah, thank you, man. I'm very happy to be here. Hello, everyone. I went from software engineering to public speaking, and that can be extremely weird because those two are completely unrelated and you learned it in a completely different way. But there is a big reason I did that. I was a software engineer for almost 10 years and I learned about coding from a very young age. Problem is, by doing that, I completely missed the mark when it comes to social skills. And I wasn't only bad at communication, and I wasn't just paralyzed when I was speaking in front of people, but I can tell you about one specific moment that happened 10 years ago where I was sitting near the exit door of my apartment and I wanted to do the groceries. But I hesitated and I waited. Why? Because I heard a noise in the corridor. It was my neighbor. And it made me so uncomfortable to go out of my apartment because my neighbor was in the corridor. And it's not that my neighbor was particularly scary. He was probably above 60 years old. But the sensation that built up in those situations was so strong that I waited. And I'd like to say that it's the single time that it happened, but this story about my neighbor being in the corridor and me waiting, it happened dozens and dozens of times. So I was a software engineer and I was a freelancer.
You never left the house.
Exactly. That's the big perk that you have as a freelancer. You can choose to not see anyone, to stay at home all the time. But the problem was that...
That can't be healthy. Yeah, that can't be healthy, Geoffrey.
It's not healthy and it gets worse. Year after year, it gets worse. When you don't face your fears, they become worse. And I had big goals. I wanted to do great things. I didn't want to just be someone who sit down in his apartment coding about things without seeing anyone outside. And there was this huge discrepancy. And that day, I realized how lousy it was. And I realized that if I don't change, if I don't do anything about it, I'll be the same in 30, in 40 years. It will not change. I will still be afraid of everything.
It sounded like, Jeff, you had extreme social anxiety. And I think you speak on this topic. What was the turning point for you? And how did you go from not being able to walk out of your apartment in case someone else is in the same corridor to coaching and being a public speaker? How does that happen?
So after I had this realization that I will stay the same if I continue like this, I decided to do everything that I fear. So first thing was quite, I will not say it was easy. Going in the corridor when your neighbor is out there and you're scared of it, it's actually quite a challenge. even if it doesn't seem like it, because it's the first time you face your fears. And that's the most difficult thing to do. The beauty is that the more you do it, and the more you get the muscle of doing it, and the easier and the more natural it gets. But it's very hard to start, because having to admit that you're scared to go out when your neighbor is out there is a lot harder than admitting that you're scared when you have a very important meeting with a very important client. Most of the people are scared of the big things. But when you're scared of the small things, you need to be able to accept that that's just your current state.
That's got to be, Jeff, it's got to feel almost paralyzing to have that much anxiety and fear to talk to people.
And you cannot tell anyone, because the fear was in something that is so common that I thought everyone would laugh about it. If it were a big fear, people would say, yeah, I know that must be hard. But if it's something so easy, something that seems so easy for everyone, cannot talk about it. And I think that's the hardest. It's to start and to be conscious that you're currently in a state where this is a fear. Because you could say, it's not that I fear, it's that I don't like it. You know, you can easily bullshit yourself into telling stories about, oh, it's not a fear, I just don't want or I just don't like. And I think it was important to get past that.
Yeah, I don't want to go outside. Geoffrey, so, many tech folks, you're not alone. Many tech folks, even tech leaders, have a struggle with public speaking, maybe not at the level that you're used to. In your experience, what's the biggest misconception that they have about presenting in front of audiences? Because that's the fear, right? People have said that the fear of death is second to public speaking to certain people, which is crazy. But tell us why that is. And what's the misconception about being up there all alone?
I think that the misconception is that people think they face the fear because they don't know enough, or because they're not ready, or because that it's not the right moment for them to do those things. When you think this, then you never go on stage. You never face it. You continue to learn. But the problem is emotional. And the way you face an emotional issue is by exposing yourself willingly, deliberately to those fears. But if you think that it's because you don't know enough, you never get to this stage where you face your fears.
Got it. What specific strategies have you found most effective in helping people feel more comfortable, more confident when pitching to investors or presenting at conferences, or frankly, going outside and socializing, let's say at a social networking event?
The best is to start in a place where there is no stake. If you face a big fear and you start by giving pitches to investors, you might freeze. But the truth is, speaking in front of any crowd is similar. So if you start with places where there's nothing to lose, there's nothing to gain, it's a good start to muscle up your exposure muscle so that you get used to it, you get used to the feeling. And another thing that I found very helpful is that during those moments where you practice in non-stake situation, to do too much. You overplay. You talk louder. You make big gesture. You smile. You scream. You play anger. You play joy. You try as many crazy things as you have in mind. It's extremely liberating. Or you talk about what you fear, you talk about what you're currently feeling while you're experiencing the fear. This also has an extremely relaxing effect. And once you get to those higher stakes situations, since you're used to do too much, you know that you are extremely open. You can be extremely open when you do that. And then suddenly, just talking to people in a normal way, without screaming, without being extremely intense, emotional, becomes very easy. It's always very easy to do less when you know you can do more. But many people, they never try to do more, to be more expressive, to express themselves in a bigger way. And so when they do their pitches, they are at their own maximum level of expression. And that's why they're not comfortable.
Jeff, how important do you think communication skills and the ability to show up and talk to people, how important is it for a tech leader specifically to advance their careers and overall have a nice balanced life?
I heard a great quote about it very recently. It was a CEO that was, I think, of an engineering company that was talking. And he said that I would rather hire someone who knows how to talk than someone who has great engineering skills. Because he will be or she will be able to talk in front of important clients, in front of government representatives. And I know, and he said, I know I can make or I can improve the engineering skills of someone. But he didn't know how to improve the speaking abilities of someone.
Well, especially as a leader, technical skills are secondary, frankly, to leadership skills, to communication, to working with different executives within the organization, outside of the organization. So that's actually makes perfect sense. At a certain level, it's not about how well you code or how well you do DevOps. It's at that
it doesn't
level,
matter how well you're coding
right?
if you're not coding on the most important thing.
Jeff, you told me an incredible personal story, and it really hit me why you're so passionate about this. But let's talk about, give me a story where working with someone, you kind of changed the trajectory of their careers based on your coaching of them becoming better speakers and more confident.
I think I can tell you about Lisa. She's a CEO of a company in New York, and she's working in the field of medical devices. And when I started to work with her, she was very awkward on stage. That's how she felt. She didn't feel confident, and she didn't like what she projected. So we started to do exercises, the same types of exercises as I told before about making a bit too much, first on camera, and she started to apply it, and then she got more used to it, to do those, to put herself in those situations. I like Lisa's example because she was extremely committed to her success. At some point, after a few weeks of coaching, I think it was after 3 weeks, she told me, Jeff, no, I have 2 speaking opportunities per day. And my mind blown, because I didn't even imagine someone would put themselves in such a situation of 2 a day. It's just enormous. And session after session.
And it's huge.
It is.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so it was the stuff that you talked about earlier is you start at the small level. You go to things that don't really matter if you make a fool of yourself. You kind of overextend yourself. You're a little crazy, a little bit exaggerated almost. And then as you elevate and do more and more important things closer and closer to, let's say, in this case, your work, then maybe you tone it down a bit. But by then, you're a crazy animated person.
And you know how to
can
get
put on a show,
the attention,
right?
and how to captivate.
Ah, wow. That's huge. Workshop and conferences are very big opportunities for leaders to promote their companies, but many go and they don't see results, right? What mistakes do you see them making, and how can they
biggest
turn those
mistake
around?
People make that make them fail at getting leads after having a speaking engagement is that they're not clear about what they do, who they work with, and how to work with them. It's as easy as that. At the end of your speech, after you showed your expertise, if your speech went okay and you could show it in a nice way, just be very clear. I do X and Y. I work with those types of people. And if you want to work with me, come talk to me or send me an email at this address. Very actionable step.
What role do you think public speaking and communication will play in the future of tech leadership, especially trends towards remote work and digital communication? Like, what do you see happening next? It almost seemed like we weren't going to need as many in-person communication skills, and that's changing a little bit. How do you feel about the future of just kind of communicating and meeting and all that?
There will be an edge to have if you're presenting good in front of a camera. That's for sure. Job interviews nowadays are often on camera. So if you can present well, you have an edge over all the other people who might be the same as you technically or even better, but can't present well.
And this could be applied anywhere, Geoffrey. This could be, applied in personal life. This could be applied in interviewing. When you go for an interview as a kind of an introvert or someone with anxiety, this could be applied to interviewing others. This could be applied internally. As a leader, you have to inspire your team. And if you don't know how to communicate, you don't know how to make eye contact, you don't know how to get people riled up for your vision, they're not going to be inspired. They're not going to be excited. They'll do it, but they'll do it to keep their job, not to.
Oh yeah, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Would you agree?
When people are really committed and it's what they want, it's completely different.
It really does. I mean, I notice even on a personal level or talking to your kids, family, friends, even the ability to command their attention to get your thoughts out is captivating. It's very important. Otherwise, you become frustrated because people interrupt you. They don't know when you're done, or you just don't want to talk because of anxiety, right? Geoffrey, what's been the most rewarding part of helping leaders overcome their fears and master public speaking?
I came from such a place of anxiety about it that when I overcame it, it was pretty clear to me that it was my mission to help people who struggle, as I struggled myself, to overcome it. So the biggest thing I get from those coaching is that I'm able to turn what made me suffer the most into something that can make the life of people better. And that's just, it's beyond words. So when I see someone who tell me, when I have someone who tell me, wow, I spoke this time and it went well and I even enjoyed it, that's wow. It's amazing.
That's great, Geoffrey. And for you, it's had obviously a personal effect, and I could see people's careers improving. They're going to be happier and more successful people. They can inspire more people. People will follow them. There's so much good that's coming out of this type of coaching. So let's do this, Geoffrey. Tell me 3 things that I should be doing, or someone that's got these challenges should do. so I've got, let's say I'm speaking at a conference in 3 weeks. What are 3 things I should be doing in
First
preparation
thing,
for
train
that?
on camera. The camera is a very good tool to practice. And especially watch yourself. When you watch yourself on camera, you will know if you're natural or not. If you feel, it means that you're not there. If when you watch yourself on camera, you feel okay about it, it means that it's going to be okay. If you talk in the same way, yes.
Great. So rehearse on camera.
If your speech is in 3 weeks, you want to work on the structure a little bit. You need to remember that attention is not a given. People who come to your talk, they are like you. They have a crazy mind that distracts them all the time. And so if you want to keep their attention during the whole, all of your talk, you need to change the rhythm when you talk. If you always talk and lecture, it will be boring. So here the advice is to put variety in your speech. Tell a story. Show something. Ask them a question. Interact with them. And by changing the rhythm, you will have a higher chance of getting their attention. And the third tip would be spend more time to craft the beginning of your speech. Because that's what determines if you get the attention or not. If you start your pitch with something, or your any type of talk with something that make them think, that makes them like, wow, that's not what I expected. That's something else. Make them curious, then you have their attention. And it's so important that take some time to craft the opening. It's very important.
When I go to conferences and I go hear someone talk, Geoffrey, you're absolutely right. Within the first 2-3 minutes, either they've captivated me and I'm putting my phone away, or I'm half listening, right? If they're lucky, or I'm walking out if it's not inspiring or interesting, and I'm out the door. And it sucks for both sides, right? Because they might be brilliant and I could have learned so much, but mentally my brain is no longer there, right? And I've decided that there's more important things to do in my brain or on my phone, and I'm out the door mentally or physically. So I think that's very inspiring. Usually when I go to someone that speaks very well in the beginning, they've got me, just like a good movie in the beginning, right? Or a good show. The first episode's got to be great. Otherwise, I don't care that, oh my God, there's 8 seasons. It must be a good show. I can't get past that first episode. I'm not watching it. I don't care how many people talk about it, you know?
I'm on LinkedIn.
Geoffrey, where can people find you?
I'm probably going to be in the title or in the description. I post tips about...
Great.
Thank you. I post tips on being a better speaker almost daily. And may I share a gift with our listeners? So I have wrote a small PDF about how to start in public speaking. What are the first few steps? And you can download it if you go on my website, geoffreyhuck.com/podcast.
Wonderful. We'll put that in the show notes as well. Geoffrey, thank you
Likewise.
for being here. It's been
Thank you very
pleasure,
much.
and we learned a lot. And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also help others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santablian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.